You're here. Perfect. You're just in time. So this is the second training. And in this training, we're going to be talking about, the power of translation. We're going to be talking about why your Spanish is not as bad as you think. Because what is one of the most common comments I receive on social media is, how do I stop translating in my head? So hopefully after this training, you'll realize that this translating in your head isn't such a bad thing. So you ready to get started? Well, let's go. I think the first thing many English learners hear is, do not think in Spanish. How ridiculous. You're an adult. You are able to recognize patterns better than any child. You already learned a language. Why not use the language you have already mastered to master another? Now, the people who say this horrible advice seem to fall into two categories. You have the first one, which is the guru. And these are people who learn two languages as children in bilingual schools or in another country. They may be Latinos or someone from Northern Europe where they require children to learn languages upon graduation. So yeah, sure, they will tell you that you shouldn't think in Spanish. They never really had to worry about this because every day when they went to school, they were surrounded by the language that they were learning. And I'll explain a bit more about this in a second. And the second person are the teachers that never learned another language. Or in other contexts, it can be Spanish speakers, Latinos, who have not mastered English, but end up teaching English for some reason. Those people know that you are trying to do something that they have never done. You start asking them questions about learning and they feel like you're putting them on the spot. They start to sweat a little bit, and to avoid the embarrassment of saying they have no idea, they say, you shouldn't translate. When you have problems or doubts about the methodology, instead of taking responsibility, they tell you that you have problems because you translate. Now, in both cases, for the guru and the teacher, both of them are wrong. Both of them are wrong for different reasons. The first one is wrong because they learned under different circumstances. And the second is wrong because, they have no idea what they're talking about. And that doesn't matter if they are Spanish speakers or native speakers of English. So, in your case, you're an adult, I'm guessing, over 18 years old. I don't know, it seems to me a good idea if you learn as an adult, right? So who else is an adult and knows how to learn languages? A polyglot, exactly. Now, I guess I'm a polyglot, but I'm not a very good one. I speak 3 languages and now I'm learning a 4th, but there are definitely others who are much better. So for me, it's better if you listen to other polyglots. So here's Luca Lampariello, an Italian who speaks 10 languages and one of the most respected figures in the polyglot community. He gave a 1-hour presentation at a polyglot congress, as you can see, on how to use translation to learn languages faster. Another polyglot, Alexander Argels, speaks more than 30 languages. He has videos on YouTube where he shows how he uses bilingual books to learn languages fast. And don't think that these people have a special gene. They are regular people just like you and I. The only difference is that they do know how to learn languages. And if you don't know, they are adults with real jobs that find time to learn languages. They know they can use translation to learn languages faster. They are definitely not saying to themselves, how to stop translating in my head? Oh, it's so bad. So, question for you, who do you want to take advice from? The person who learned English as a child in a bilingual school? The person who has never learned another language fluently? Or someone who learned languages as an adult like you are trying to do? Excellent choice. In my own experience, I use Google Translate a lot to help me learn faster. Without the translator, I'm sure I would still be a beginner in Spanish. Now, you might want to ask me, so what do you do with your students? Well, that's a good question. So in my case, I've written dozens of stories for pre-intermediate and intermediate students. Stories that connect the Latin American culture with the gringo culture. I have students translate these stories from English to Spanish with the guidance of a bilingual teacher. Now, you can do something like this alone, but it's more difficult to recognize the holes in your English and to fill those holes with knowledge. And that's the job of your bilingual teacher, is to reveal the holes for you so that you can fill them with knowledge and keep progressing. So, you can try this out a little bit. Question for you: how would you translate this into Spanish? He walked into the store because he had to get a few groceries. Now, you might know how to translate this perfectly, you might not, but I'll translate it how many of my students have translated it in the past. So they will say something like, Él caminó en la tienda porque él tenía que conseguir unos... ¿Qué es eso, profe? So, walked into is not caminó en, and get, it could be conseguir, but in this context it's not really conseguir. And of course, in this case, the student has no idea what groceries are. So, does this mean that they know this or they don't know this? Well, they know some of it, but do they know walked into, do they know get, do they know groceries? No, they don't. And for me as a teacher, this is perfect because now I know exactly what my student does know and exactly what my student doesn't know. And this is very powerful because instead of teaching my students something they already know and making them waste their money learning something they already know, they're only going to learn what they don't know. So in this case, walked into is entró. So the only reason that I know this is difficult for Latinos is because of these translation classes. Without these translation classes, I would have never figured out that in Spanish, you guys are much more general with your translation. So for example, walked into, ran into, flew into, drove into, in Spanish is just entró, 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 entró. And again, the only reason I know this is because in one class, my students had to translate a verb of movement with a preposition afterwards, and they couldn't do it. And I soon realized that this doesn't really exist in Spanish. You guys are not as specific in Spanish with your verbs of movement. And I'll give you a challenge right now. Go to YouTube, go to your social media, and try to find a teacher who's talked about this in the past. And I bet you the only teacher who has a video about it is going to be me. All right, now what about get? Well, get in this case is, well, comprar. So get, we can use get for many things. In this context, it could be conseguir, but the best translation would be comprar. So my students many times don't know all the different ways that we use get. So we can use get to be comprar. And, well, groceries, that's how we say alimentos or provisiones in English. Well, that says provisions, but it should be provisiones. So, with translation, it shows the holes in your English. And by learning what you don't know instead of what you already know, you'll reach fluency much more quickly and you'll save a lot of money. Because, well, of course, if you're a person who invests in your education, then you're going to save a lot of money because you won't be wasting it on classes that are teaching something you already know, like, I don't know, the present perfect, the second conditional, something like that. You only learn what you don't know. Now, how would you do this at home? So, well, you could do this at home by taking a text in English and trying to translate it to Spanish. So you could do this in your mind, or you could do it in a more powerful way by writing the translation on a piece of paper. Now, one thing about this, you don't need to do this with everything you read, everything you watch on television. You just have to do this, once a day or just a few times a week. And it doesn't have to be an entire book, just, a paragraph, a page, of English, try to translate it into Spanish. And with Luca, what he does to make this even more powerful, an even more powerful tool for learning, is that he will translate what he translated into the language he's learning back. Well, no, one sec, sorry. He translates from the language he's already learning, he writes it down, and then a few days later, he'll translate back into the language that he's learning. And when he does this, he'll compare his translation with the original text, and he'll see what he has correct and what he has incorrect. And obviously what he has incorrect is showing him the holes in his vocabulary, in his grammar, in the new language that he's learning. So yeah, you could definitely do this at home. So you can learn English much quicker using your Spanish. Can you see that now after this second training? You can? Excellent. All right. So that was the second training, like I just said. Tomorrow you're going to have your third and final training, and we're going to be talking about why so many Spanish speakers end up with a Sofia Vergara accent. And while it's good for her, she makes a lot of money because of her Latino accent. For somebody like you, well, you probably already know that's not a good thing. It's not something you want. If you want to learn an English that opens up doors of opportunity for you, you're gonna have to learn a neutral English. So tomorrow we'll be talking about real gringo pronunciation. So I hope you're excited. You'll receive an email in your inbox tomorrow, and I'll see you in the next video.